Hello, so in this episode, we're going to take the idea of building a manager and a rep dashboard one step further. And I'm actually going to go through the process of creating a dashboard for each of those users or each of those audiences and talk about the concept of how do you build one dashboard that reinforces the other. So I'm going to start with kind of the existing dashboard that we have in our demo environment. I just want to talk about this dashboard right here that we have called the lead aging report. So this lead aging report basically shows me all of the leads that have been generated and what their status is. We have this concept called neglected account. And so you can see here that I've got a certain number of accounts that need attention, and I have a certain number of accounts that are quote-unquote updated. But if I drill down into this report, you'll see that within that categorization, some of these accounts are owned by a user we call demo user, and some are owned by Steve Snap. So in this example, what I want to do is I actually want to build a dashboard that shows that team structure to the manager, and then also that same idea that shows that team structure to the individual rep. So what I'm going to do here is using the concepts that we learned in the previous dashboard. I want to go ahead and first just grab the name of this report just so it's easy for me to find. So let me just drill into this real quick, and I'll grab the name of this report just so you can see how I'm going to use it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and build the manager dashboard. So I'll do new dashboard. I'll call this something really creative like manager dashboard. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave it in my private dashboards for now, just for demonstration purposes. We talked in the previous video about how you control who sees the dashboard by what folder you put it in. So you may want to just spend a minute looking at that video, but I'll go ahead and just leave this in my private folder just to keep things simple. So I'll go ahead and select Create, and as you'll see here, it takes me into the generic or the standard dashboard component area. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select Add Component. Let me just make sure you guys got that. I'm going to select Component Add here. I'm going to select the report. So since I copied the name, I could just type it in or paste it in. But in this particular case, I know it's this one that I've been working on. So I'll select the one that I've been working on.
So in this example, when I create the dashboard, I want to use the vertical stacked or stacked vertical bar chart. That gives me the option of then selecting what I want my x-axis to be and then what I want my segments within the vertical bar to be. So by selecting vertical stacked and then account owner as the x-axis, you'll see that it creates a vertical bar for each user. And then because of the way that I set up the sorts in the report, it takes the next grouping in the report, which is activity status, and makes that the stack. I could also flip that by changing the x-axis to activity status, and then you'll see that the bar is the status and the segments are the account owner. Obviously, I want it to be account owner. Now, I also think that for this kind of report, you might want to use record count rather than sum of potential. For the sake of keeping it consistent, I'll leave it as revenue potential. But for this kind of report, I actually think a record count would be more valuable. But we'll just keep it as revenue potential so you can see the example. Once I've made the changes to the component that I want, I go ahead and select Update, which modifies the chart to show the columns and the segments that we talked about. And then from this point, I select Save and then Done. That now changes those elements within that dashboard. Now what I want to do is I actually want to make a copy of this report and modify it to give me the rep-only view, which I'll go ahead and do now. So in this particular example, I could go to the Reports option and pull up the lead aging report. I find it easier just to click on the report from here and then go ahead and select Save As. So what I'm again doing is I'm making a copy of the manager report so that I can modify it to show me the specific rep that I want to look at. So I'll hit Save As. I'll call this lead aging rep report. And since I've done this a few times, I'll go ahead and do V2 here. Again, I can put it in private folder. I'll just leave it in LeadSmart. That should be fine. So I'll go ahead and select Save. Now, just to be clear on what we're doing, is that when I edit this report, the first thing I want to point out is that this report is currently grouping by account owner. What we're going to do is actually change it so it only shows the current logged in user. So in this example, I'm going to click on the filters section, and where it says show me all accounts, I'm going to change that to say my accounts. So this right here essentially tells the report only show those accounts that are owned by the current user that's logged in. And that user right now is me because I'm logged in as Steve Snap. So in this example now, this report is specific to Steve Snap because I'm logged in as Steve Snap. Now, at this moment, I could save this and move on, but I also have this account grouping here that's kind of out of place now. So what I'm going to do right here under the group is I'm going to remove the grouping by account owner. So now what I've done is I basically made this a one-level group report that shows me the records owned by the current logged in user, and it's grouped by activity status. So at this point I can simply hit save and then close, and that will take me out of the report. So now what I want to do is create the rep dashboard. I've got the report ready. I now have everything I need to create the rep dashboard. So at this point, I'll go ahead and select dashboards. I'll select new dashboard. I will call this the rep dashboard. I'll leave it in private dashboards like I did before and select create. I'll add component. I'll select the report that I just made. Lead aging rep report V2. And now what I'm faced with is I want to make this report tell the same story to the rep in a way that reinforces what the manager is seeing. Now keep in mind that what you'll see in this dashboard are only those accounts owned by the logged in user. So in this case, it's only things that Steve Snap's looking at. So I'll make it a vertical chart just to kind of keep the layout consistent. And now you'll notice that it's only showing me records that need attention and are updated, but they all are records that are owned by Steve Snap. So in this example, I'll go ahead and select add. I don't really need to do a whole lot with my x-axis and other things, but I do want to make sure that whatever I'm using here for my y-axis is the same metric. So I talked to the earlier part of the video about making this record count because I think that's a good technique. But in this case, because we're using revenue potential on the manager view, I'm going to use revenue potential here on the rep view. So I'll go ahead and select add. I'll expand this a little bit, and now I'm ready to save this. So I'll go ahead and select save, and then done. And again, when I look at this dashboard as Steve Snap, I'm only seeing those records that belong to Steve Snap.
Now the main idea is that when I'm in this dashboard and I'm looking at this, when I look at this number, 1.2 million roughly, that's his total, and how many, he has 800,000, let's say, in needs attention. That's the same exact number that I see when I'm in Steve Snap. So now Steve Snap and the manager can be talking about the exact same metric, but one is team specific and one is rep specific. The essence of this strategy is that our manager's job is to drive a behavior, and they want there to be an accountability association with this dashboard. So Steve Snap should have an emotional reaction or a visceral reaction when he sees 882 here. And that reaction is going to be based on the fact that when this number is over, let's say 500,000 or 250 or whatever, and that number is the number the manager establishes, there's going to be a reaction to it. So if the manager never says anything about anything over 250,000, the rep's not going to necessarily have any connection to it or reaction to it. But when he sees 882 and the manager's always on me, if it's over 250, there's going to be that kind of like, hey, my oil light just went on, I better go to Jiffy Lube. So that's the essence of what we're trying to create with this manager concept. So just to recap, what we did was we took essentially a team report. We modified it slightly to change the sorts to give us basically a grouping by rep and then whatever the other metric was. Then we decide how we want to measure it. Is it record count? Like is it the number of records, or is it the dollar amount? There's some of those details. And then once we had that story the way we wanted it, that report rather. Then we made a copy of it. We made it rep specific by changing it from all accounts to my accounts, and then we built a rep dashboard based on that. Now, the key to all of this is now what I talked about in the other video, which is the idea of building a meeting rhythm and making sure that you have some clear expectations on what these dashboards should look like. And then you, over the first couple of meetings, you want to really reinforce that picture to your reps. And then once you've done that, and this is the holy grail, they don't, no one really needs to tell you that your oil light needs attention. When it goes on, you know what to do. Same idea here. We're just defining what an oil light is. If this is over 250,000 or if it's over 20 accounts or whatever the metric is, you just want to reinforce that so you create that reaction to that behavior. So thank you for taking a few minutes to watch this video. If you have any questions, please let us know, and we look forward to working with you.